Welcome back to the Sidebar. In today's episode, we're diving into the music of Jeremy Brunansky. Our host just wrapped up a deep dive into 13 years of documented music and performance. Here, your favorite AI hosts seek to uncover how longevity, talent, and a willingness to collaborate often open unexpected doors. They look at the music Brunansky made from 2000 to 2013. They break apart how the relationships that forged the songs also develop the artistic style of each chapter. Finally, they challenge you to consider what areas you continue to show up for and how that might open surprising opportunities down the road. Grab your coffee, tea, or wine, and let's unpack why you should subscribe to Brunansky's blog today. Welcome to episode 5 of The Sidebar.
You know, we have this cultural obsession with the whole artist's journey.
Oh, absolutely. The classic rags to riches music story.
Right. And usually when we picture it, it's this very sleek, linear graph. Like you start in a garage, you get discovered by some guy in a suit.
You sign the papers.
Exactly. Sign the papers and boom, you're playing stadiums.
Yeah.
Just a straight line up and to the right.
Which is a great story for a movie. But if you actually look at the data, if you look at the lives of people who actually sustain creativity for 20 or 30 years, that line doesn't exist.
No, it really doesn't.
It looks a lot more like a spider web. It's this messy, beautiful tangle of relationships, weird side gigs, skills you never thought you'd use.
Yeah.
And, recording sessions in places that definitely were not designed for acoustics.
Oh, for sure. And that is exactly what we were unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into the work and the life of Jeremy Brunansky. And looking at the stack of sources we have here, we're talking raw audio tracks, detailed show notes spanning from 2000 to 2013, photos of live performances, plus this really fascinating document called a reference guide. You realize pretty quickly that we aren't just looking at a typical musician here.
No, we're looking at what the documentation actually calls a frontline leader. We're looking at a creative footprint that spans over 20 years.
Right.
But the mission for this deep dive isn't just to list off a discography or say, hey, look at this cool song.
Right, that'd be boring.
Exactly. We want to figure out how longevity in the arts actually works. Because when you look at this file, it becomes so clear that staying power isn't just about how well you can play a G chord.
What is the invisible thread that connects an empty, echoing church, a wooden shed with a rusty 4-track cassette recorder, a high-end recording conservatory, and a stage at Disneyland?
We're talking about a timeline that swings from a classical choir to avant-garde theater, from high-end digital studios to, well, literal wooden sheds.
The shed recording, I can't wait to get to that.
It's a good one.
So the thesis we're testing today is this. How does sticking with the same people and honing quality art over decades create opportunities that you never could have predicted?
I love that framing.
I want to start with the people first.
Yeah.
Because usually when we talk about bands, we talk about the drama.
Oh, yeah. The creative differences, the breakup.
Exactly. But the show notes here paint a completely different picture. It starts back in high school with a band called Last One Standing.
Which is a very prophetic name considering what happens later.
Seriously. But look at the composition of this group. The notes specified this was a mix of childhood friends from junior high, and even a foreign exchange student.
Who was living with Brunansky at the time.
Right. So it's this incredibly organic, tight-knit foundation.
And that matters so much because usually high school bands are just incredibly volatile. You graduate, you drift apart, you reinvent yourself in college. But here, the core group actually evolves.
They don't break up.
No. They go to college, and Last One Standing morphs into Jeeves.
Which the notes describe as a pop band.
Right, but the key metric here isn't the genre change, it's the retention. They kept 3 of the original 5 members.
Wow.
That is statistically so rare for that age group. And that retention speaks to a shared creative language. When you play with people for 5, 6, 10 years, you develop this shorthand. You don't have to explain the rhythm, they just feel it.
Because they know you.
Exactly. That efficiency allows you to work faster and explore way deeper ideas because you aren't wasting time on the basics.
There's a specific anecdote in the notes that I think perfectly illustrates this bond over everything mentality. It's about the Scott Hickok project.
Ah, yes.
So fast forward a bit, it's time for their 10-year high school reunion.
The dreaded 10-year reunion.
Dreaded for most. Most people go to those to, I don't know, show off their jobs, see who went bald, or just relive the glory days. But What did these guys do?
They completely skipped it.
Skipped it.
In lieu of attending the 10-year high school anniversary, 3 of the original members met up at Leslie's recording studio in Phoenix to make music.
I found that detail so striking when I was reading through. It is such a deliberate rejection of the whole social performance thing in favor of the creative performance.
It's a pure statement of priorities. This is exactly what I mean by longevity creating opportunity. They didn't choose the nostalgia of the reunion. They chose the work.
They chose the relationship they had built through the music.
Right, and I think that's a huge insight for anyone listening. Real networking isn't working a room at a mixer. It's doing the work with people you trust for 10 solid years.
And that trust clearly pays dividends, because that collaboration didn't stop at the studio door.
Yeah.
Even after college, Brunansky forms a duo with Scott Hickok, who, let's remind you, he is known since junior high.
Yeah, a really long time.
The notes call them the backbone of the group. Almost done.
Backbone is the perfect word. When you're gigging around Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe, dealing with bad sound systems, late start times, and different crowds, you need a backbone.
You definitely do.
You need someone on stage who knows your next move before you even make it. That shared history fuels the creative output. It allows them to weather the storms that would easily break up newer bands.
But we have to talk about the individual skill set now, because that is what provides the adaptability. I'm looking at this reference guide source, and the skill stack listed for Brunansky is, well, it's frankly intimidating.
It is massive. We see the expected stuff, right? Classical voice, piano, guitar.
Sure.
But then it veers off. Jazz percussion, Latin percussion, acting, dancing, filmmaking.
We are in junior high now.
Yeah.
He is learning percussion. He is still doing the performing arts thing. But the notes specifically say that this junior high is where the interest in filmmaking began.
That is the crucial breadcrumb in this whole stack.
Why does that stand out so much to you?
Because if you look at his timeline, he doesn't actually become a professional filmmaker until decades later. But the seed was planted right there. Filmmaking is what we call a container art.
A container art. What does that mean?
Think about it. If you want to make a film, you need to understand writing. You need to understand visual composition, which is photography and painting.
Right.
You need to understand rhythm and sound, which is music. And of course, you need to understand acting to direct the actors.
So by being interested in film early on, he basically gave himself permission to be interested in literally everything else.
Precisely. Whether he knew it or not, every single other skill he picked up over the next 20 years, the drumming, the acting, the writing, was just him filling up that container.
Is this common? Do most musicians stretch this wide?
Usually, no. Most people find a lane and they stay in it. They get good at rock or they get good at jazz. This archive is a prime example of the generalist.
Yeah.
The industry constantly tells you to specialize so you can be marketable. But this shows that the actual creative life is often just about saying yes to everything. It's about gathering tools.
Speaking of saying yes to everything, let's talk about where these sounds were captured, because the physical spaces seem just as important as the genres themselves.
This is actually one of my favorite parts of this deep dive. We often assume music is made in these perfect, soundproof rooms with expensive acoustic glass.
Right, professional studios.
But this archive proves that creativity flourishes wherever you can fit a microphone.
The most vivid example for me is the track 1,000 Times. This is a solo recording, and the notes explicitly say it was recorded in a wooden shed.
The wooden shed.
Using a 4-track cassette recorder.
Okay, we have to pause on the 4-track cassette recorder for a second.
Right.
For anyone used to just pulling up GarageBand on their phone, this is the literal definition of limitation.
Yeah.
You have a physical cassette tape. It has 4 parallel lines of audio, the tracks that you can record onto.
You can record a guitar, a vocal, maybe a bass, and then you have exactly 1 spot left.
Exactly. And if you want to add a 5th instrument, you have to do what's called bouncing.
Bouncing?
Yeah. You record the guitar and vocal, mix them together, and record that combined sound onto a new track, which frees up the old ones. But here's the catch. Once you bounce it, you can't unmix it.
Oh, wow.
It's destructive editing. You have to fully commit to the sound right then and there.
There is no Command Z.
No undo button at all. And every single time you bounce, the audio quality degrades. You get all this tape hiss.
Which you can hear. You can hear it in the vibe of 1,000 Times.
It becomes part of the song.
The song is about this really obsessive, almost overwhelming love The lyrics are dreamed about her 1,000 times, and it feels claustrophobic and intimate, like someone pouring their heart out in a tiny room because they literally have nowhere else to go.
The environment completely shapes the performance. In a shed, you're isolated. The acoustics are what we call dead, meaning the wood absorbs the sound so it feels very close to your ear. It allows for that raw, unpolished vulnerability.
And contrast that with the chamber choir recording.
Right. Recorded in a church.
An unoccupied church, specifically.
So now you have stone, you have glass, you have massive high ceilings, you get natural reverb.
Reverb is basically the echo, right?
Basically, yes. It's the sound waves bouncing off hard surfaces and coming back to you milliseconds later. In a church, the sound has physical space to travel. It inherently creates a sense of awe. You simply cannot sing if music be the food of love, the same way in a shed as you do in a cathedral. The space demands a completely different kind of respect. The physics of the room change how you use your voice. You literally have to sing slower to let the chords ring out and fade.
And then we swing to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the hyper-professional spaces. We have recordings from the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, or CRAS, and Leslie's recording studio.
Right, so now you've moved from the 4-track cassette, which is tactile, magnetic tape, noisy, to these high-end mixing consoles and perfect acoustic treatment. It represents the journey from the amateur enthusiast to the trained professional.
But there's one more space that I think is the most surprising of all.
Stage at Disneyland.
Yes, the Royal Theater stage, which used to be Carnation Plaza Gardens. I mean, that is a very specific kind of pressure. You aren't playing for drunk people at a dive bar. You're playing for families and tourists.
That's a legendary spot. Count Basie played there. Duke Ellington played there. It's a completely different audience.
And we also have these photos from a theater troupe called Space 55. The visuals here are wild. I'm looking at these photos, and okay, we have to describe this for everyone listening. It's a stage set with a starry backdrop. There's a prop that looks like a robot, and it's literally labeled buffering.
And there's Brunansky acting and playing drums for a weekly episodic comedy.
It looks chaotic.
It looks like serious play. It really highlights the entertainment aspect of his persona. We have established he has the rigid technical discipline from the conservatory. He has the tight musical discipline from the funk band. Now he is throwing all that discipline completely out the window.
But what is the value of this stuff? I mean, putting a bucket on your head on stage.
It destroys your ego. You cannot take yourself too seriously when you are doing avant-garde sketch comedy. But more importantly, it breaks your reliance on linear storytelling.
Because it's just absurdism.
Exactly. Avant-garde theater does not follow the standard 3-act structure. It operates on dream logic.
So how does a filmmaker actually use that?
It expands your palette as a storyteller. If you only ever study Hollywood structure, your films are going to feel formulaic and predictable.
They'll feel like every other movie out there.
Right. But if you have spent time in the Space 55 trenches, you are comfortable with the weird. You are comfortable with imagery that doesn't immediately make logical sense, but makes emotional sense.
It gives his later work this layer of unpredictability that you just don't get from reading a screenwriting manual.
Exactly. It's the gym for the creative brain.
It is wild to think of him going from the absolute precision of a funk drummer to the chaos of a buckethead actor.
But that is the range of a true polymath.
So what does this all add up to? Because there's a twist in the show notes that I think perfectly captures the success paradox of this entire deep dive.
You're talking about the Capitol Records incident.
Yes, this is the plot twist. So Brunansky had moved away from music for a bit to focus on film and writing. He's doing his thing, living his life. And suddenly he gets an email from Capitol Records in Hollywood inviting him to tour the facilities.
And the notes say he was flattered and confused because he literally hadn't been musically active in years.
It's so ironic, right? You chase the record deal for years, you bang on all the doors, and then when you finally stop chasing it, they email you.
But I think it proves the exact point we've been making throughout this deep dive. Quality art has a long tail.
Well, long tail.
The work you do in a shed, or at a high school jazz competition, or in a church, it resonates, it travels, it opens doors years later when you aren't even looking at the door anymore.
But I think it is really telling that he didn't view this as a failure or a missed opportunity. He just viewed it as a transition.
Because he was already moving into phase 4, the convergence.
Right. The reference guide lists his current disciplines. Writer, director, producer, published author. He finally circled all the way back to that junior high ambition.
But he did not come back empty-handed. This is the key insight of this entire deep dive. He came back to filmmaking with a backpack full of tools he stole from all these other disciplines.
The show notes explicitly state that he uses his ear for music to help craft soundtracks and scores for his films.
And that is a legitimate superpower for a director.
How so?
Think about the communication gap on a normal film set. A director will tell a composer, make the scene sadder. What does that actually mean musically?
It's totally subjective.
Exactly. But Brunansky can say, we need to resolve this chord to a minor third, or the tempo of this string section is dragging against the rhythm of the visual edit.
He literally hears the film.
He hears the rhythm of the dialogue. Good dialogue is percussion, it has a beat, it has a syncopation. If you have spent 10 years as a drummer, you inherently write better dialogue.
There are original lyrics here that hint at what was going on in their heads during this decade.
The lyrical themes are surprisingly consistent, even across all the different genres.
I noticed a lot of wanderlust, if that's the right word.
Definitely wanderlust. Look at the song Story of You and I by the Scott Hickok Project.
Life is not live inside a book. Let's go and get lost for a while.
There is a strong rejection of the standard path there. The lyrics explicitly mention losing faith in 5-year plans. It perfectly captures that specific anxiety of early adulthood, that intense desire to escape the script society has written for you.
But then you have the total opposite side of that coin. The heartbreak and the reality check.
Another Lonely Girl by the band Almost Done is a prime example of that.
This one felt very raw to me. There's that spoken word interlude where he's complaining about a girl breaking up with him because he's supposedly too nice, only to go right back to a guy who was actively cheating on her.
The lyric is, walking away from me, babe, with apathy. It's that deep frustration of being the good guy and finishing last. And then you have Last Goodbye by Jeeves, which is even more blunt and final. I don't want to see you again. This is my last goodbye.
It's so interesting how the music violently swings between this romantic idealism of let's go get lost and this cold, hard cynicism.
And that cynicism really peaks in the rock song we mentioned earlier, Your Tears by Last One Standing.
Oh man, that one is brutal. Back in high school, everyone loved you. But now you're alone. The real world doesn't care about your tears.
That specific line really sticks with me. The real world doesn't care about your tears. It's a harsh coming-of-age realization. The protective bubble of high school pops, and suddenly you realize the universe is completely indifferent to your sadness.
But the theme that fascinated me the absolute most was the metaphor of the performer, the idea of the clown.
The track, Fate's Favorite Clown. This ties everything together for me perfectly.
The lyrics are, I'm here to put on a show for you. Sad clown with a smiling frown.
Think back to the Space 55 theater photos, the comedy, the costumes, the chicken song. This artist spends a massive amount of time entertaining people, trying to make them laugh, but this song peels back the curtain on that. It talks about the exhausting act of performing happiness while feeling internal sorrow. The curtains rise, the lights go down, but there is no show.
It's the classic tears of a clown trope, sure, but it feels incredibly earned here because we've seen the physical evidence of all this performance work. It's almost the service industry side of music. You have to smile for the crowd, even if you feel terrible.
Exactly. You are there to serve the audience. And then finally, there's My Requiem.
Which is a very heavy title for a young working musician.
It is. Baby, will you be there throwing flowers down on my grave? And then later, I can't take nothing with me when I finally leave, but maybe I can take just your melody.
That is the core of it, isn't it? The belief that the music is the only thing that actually survives us. It's a request to be remembered through the song itself. Sing it one more time.
It's all about legacy. Even if it's recorded in a hot wooden shed with terrible tape hiss, it exists. It outlasts the fleeting moment.
So we've unpacked this entire 13-year archive. We've seen the journey from the wooden shed to the high-end professional studio. So we have the technical skills, the musical ear, the performance background, but I want to talk about the software running on this machine.
The brain box.
Yes. The reference guide has this incredible section called the brain box. It details his intellectual diet.
This is honestly my favorite part of the stack. Because if you want to know how someone really thinks, you just look at what they read.
And his list is, it's a very strange mix. We have heavy philosophy in here. Carl Jung, John Locke, Marcus Aurelius.
The heavy hitters. You've got Stoicism, archetypal psychology, social contract theory.
But sitting right next to Marcus Aurelius on this list is the Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, The Defenders, Marvel Comics.
I love that so much.
What happens when you mix Carl Jung with Marvel Comics?
You get modern myth-making. See, a lot of people think comics are low art. and classical philosophy is high art. Brunansky clearly does not make that distinction.
He just consumes both.
And honestly, he is right. Think about the Silver Surfer. That is a purely philosophical character.
A guy on a surfboard in space.
Right, but he's a herald of destruction, wandering the cosmos, grappling with servitude and morality and the weight of his own existence.
So by reading both, he is learning how to package these really deep philosophical ideas into accessible pop culture wrappers.
Exactly. If you just read Jung, you might write a really dry academic paper that nobody reads. If you just read comics, you might write a shallow action movie.
But if you read both,
You write The Matrix, you write Star Wars, you create stories that are incredibly fun to watch but hit you in the gut with actual meaning.
there's another category in the brain box that I found really surprising for an artist. It lists history and strategy, authors like Lao Tzu and Roger Crowley, and business and leadership with names like Bob Iger.
And this is where the producer title really comes into focus. A lot of creatives completely ignore this side of the coin. They think business and logistics are somehow the enemy of pure art.
But Brunansky is actively studying military strategy. Roger Crowley writes about Mediterranean naval warfare.
Think about what it takes to run a film set. You have 100 people, you have millions of dollars of rented equipment, you have a brutally tight schedule, weather issues, massive ego clashes.
It's chaos.
It isn't a tea party, it is a military campaign. You need logistics, you need a clear chain of command, and you need strategy.
That makes total sense.
By studying Lao Tzu, or Roger Crowley, he is treating filmmaking as a tactical operation. How do I move my troops, my crew, to capture the shot before the sun goes down? That is pure strategy.
So being a generalist isn't just about combining art skills. It is about combining the soul of a poet with the mind of a general.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And the reference guide adds one more crucial layer to all of this: travel.
Yes, he's been to nearly all 50 U.S. states, South Africa, Poland, the Netherlands.
Because you can't just read about the world.
So let's wrap this up. We started this deep dive talking about the immense pressure we all feel to specialize, to pick a lane early and stay in it. But looking at Jeremy Brunansky's timeline, that advice feels almost dangerous.
It does. If he had picked a lane at age 18, say, just focusing entirely on classical vocal performance, he might be a very successful singer today.
But he wouldn't be the filmmaker he is. He wouldn't be the published author he is.
Exactly. He needed the R&B drumming to understand rhythm in his film editing. He needed that nightmare 4-track cassette shed to learn rapid decision-making.
He needed the avant-garde theater to understand visual absurdity and break his ego.
And he needed the military strategy books to actually get the movies funded and made.
It is the combination that creates the unique value. It isn't just skill stacking, it is skill synthesis.
And that is the major takeaway for anyone listening to this. We so often look at our past interests, that random band we started or that weird hobby we dropped after 2 years, as wasted time.
We think, oh, I wasted 3 years doing theater when I should have been studying business.
But Brunansky's story proves that wrong. You didn't waste it. You just haven't figured out how to use it in your current container yet.
You are just filling the container.
Exactly.
So here is our final thought for you to chew on based on that lyric about getting lost. In a world that is completely obsessed with optimization and efficiency, are we losing the magic that comes from taking the long road?
Are we so hyper-focused on reaching the destination that we forget to spend a few years in a wooden shed or acting with a bucket on our heads?
Maybe the detours aren't detours at all. Maybe they're the only way to actually get where you were going.
I think that's exactly right.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Go get lost in something new this week.
See you next time.